Hey everyone, this is Sam Warren with the Houston Chronicle, and today we're going to be breaking down some film on the Texans' season opening loss to the Los Angeles Rams. And what we're really going to be focusing on today is some of the lapses in the coverage that the Texans secondary had down kind of in the second half here. And I'll start out by saying that the Texans secondary wasn't the main reason that the Texans lost this game. They failed to score a touchdown for the second time in 2 years, and when you're playing against a team like the Rams, probably not going to win that game. Also, they had major discipline issues with 11 penalties for 80 yards, constantly kind of playing behind the ball. That really put the Texans offense in a hole. So the Texans defense was really trying to make up for a lot of things, but this Texans secondary has heralded themselves as the best in the league. Kalen Bullock said during training camp that they're not one of the best, they are the best. So if they're going to hold themselves up to the standard, they have some issues that they need to fix. And those issues are their eye discipline. D'Amico Ryans talked about it after the game that their eyes were not in the right spots. And some of these big plays, you can see that eye discipline not being in the right position. So we're going to talk through some of that. And the first play that we're going to talk about is the explosive play to Xavier Smith in the first drive coming out in the second half. So what we'll start with here is the Texans are in they're in cover two coverage, and we're gonna want to focus on CJ Gardner Johnson here. So they're in cover two. They've got trips to the field side, and the what we're gonna see is an in-breaking route from Tutu Atwell after he comes out in motion here, and then we're gonna see another in-breaking route from another receiver over here, and then we're going to see a corner route coming from Xavier Smith to split that too. That's really going to put CJ Gardner Johnson in a bind, but he also puts himself in a bad position because of his eye positioning and because he flips his hips too early. So what we'll see here is once they snap the ball, you see Xavier Smith pressing vertical. And that's going to catch the attention of Jalen Petrie. But they're playing cover two, so you have five underneath defenders right here. That's not Petrie's direct responsibility, but he's going to go out to it a little bit. But then we'll see CJ Gardner Johnson here defending in cover two down to the field with these three receivers. He's trying to figure out what's going on. He sees Smith get vertical and he flips his hips, but he flips his hips with probably around 10 yards of cushion there. So that's pretty early. And the way that he flips his hips, he flips it to the quarterback. So he leaves himself susceptible to these outbreaking routes. And primarily he does that so he can keep an eye on the quarterback. If we watch CJ and what he does, his eyes remain on Stafford even as Gibson or as Smith is running down the field here. And what that causes is as Stafford is setting his feet to throw the ball, you're going to see Gardner Johnson kind of start to drift in here, just because he's backpedaling and his eyes are taking him that way. So he's already in a bad position here because you see Matthew Stafford has his feet set, ready to throw the ball. Smith is making his break to the corner, and Gardner Johnson is stuck here with his hips facing the wrong way, and he's already inside of Smith. So he's in a bad spot. Petrie leaves Smith because this in breaking route is coming in here, and that's his responsibility because he's playing cover two. So that leaves Gardner Johnson having to flip himself around, which he's just not going to be able to make that play. And that leaves Smith wide open, kind of down the sidelines for a big 36-yard gain. So, this is one of the big examples of the eye discipline there, with Gardner Johnson having his eyes on Matthew Stafford, not really on the receiver, putting himself in a bad position and opening the door to an explosive play. The second play that we're going to focus on is the Davis Allen touchdown. Two plays that came after that Smith explosive play there. And what we're really going to see here is another example of the eye discipline that D'Amico Ryans was talking about, but instead of it being on Matthew Stafford, it's going to be really focused on his play fake and the potential running ability of Kyren Williams. And the Texans really sold out to stop the run against the Rams. They loaded the box quite a bit. I think it was the most that any team had done against Sean McVay when he's been the head coach of the Rams. And they did a good job of that. I mean, they shut down Kyron, he ran for 66 yards, I think, on 18 carries. So they really stopped the Rams' running attack, but that really limited them against play action opportunities, and you'll see that on this play. So what we're going to see here is the Texans are in cover one. They'll have Kalen Bullock up here in the deep post as the one high safety. Then we have man across the board down here. And then who we want to focus on here is uh, CJ Gardner Johnson here and Kamari Lassiter. They're both going to bite on this play fake here, while their responsibility are these two tight ends down here. And that really puts them in a bind because you see both of them kind of flow down to that mesh point with Kyron Williams, especially CJ Gardner Johnson right here. And Gardner Johnson is on Davis Allen, closest defender, but they've got these two defenders here. They're kind of trying to sort out who their responsibility is, and it turns out that Lassiter ends up going with Davis Allen. CJ Gardner Johnson will go down here with Colby Parkinson. Derek Barnett here isn't in coverage. He's trying to get to Matthew Stafford over here. So this is an uncovered guy. And that biting down on that play fake leaves Kamari Lassiter really in kind of a bind and trying to scramble back to get to Allen. And what we'll see here is, that play fake just leaves Lassiter completely out of position. Bullock was doing fine. He didn't bite down on the play fake. He was fine in his single high look. But just because of the quarterback that Matthew Stafford is, he's just going to put it right on Allen, right over Lassiter's head, out of the reach of Bullock, just for a touchdown there. So that's just another example of the eye discipline that DeMeco Ryans is talking about, where the Texans are pretty much lacking, is that can't be biting down on those play fakes. We're looking in the backfield when the quarterback is looking to throw the ball. So that's just another example of where the Texans were lacking there. And that ultimately ended up being the game-winning score, even though it was early on in the third quarter, especially because the Texans couldn't really come back and score off of that. And then the third play that we're going to talk about here is the game, eventually the game-winning play with Puka Nacua getting open on Jalen Petrie over here. And this is also another example of kind of the Texans' aggressive play calling against the run. It's 3rd and 8 with a minute 27 on the clock. They've got a timeout. A stop here would let the Texans get the ball back, down one score, maybe another drive and a chance to win the game. But ultimately, they won't get that because of the limited coverage ability of Petrie in one-on-one situations, as well as kind of biting down on the play fake with a lot of these guys in an aggressive play call. So what we're going to see here is we're going to have the Texans playing cover two man with two deep safeties over here, and then man down across the board over here. Actually, we'll have kind of an inverted cover two with Kalen Bullock coming down, grabbing one of these crossing tight ends over here. Derek Stingley kind of dropping back in this post with Devontae Adams, and CJ Gardner Johnson playing as another deep safety over here. But what we're going to see is Puka Nacua come in here. That gives Matthew Stafford an indicator that it's man coverage down here, because you see Jalen Petrie kind of flow with it. And then we're also going to see Azeez Al-Shaair walk up. That puts the Texans in a bind with their coverage unit, just because that takes one defender out of the passing lane. So the Texans are really focused here on Kyron Williams running the ball. Just the play before, the Kyron Williams ran it for 8 yards. It's a 3rd and 8 situation. They really don't want Kyron to be able to get the first down and salt away the game that way. If they can stop him for a short run, that lets them take their time out, and they'll have the ability to get the punt and get the ball back. So that the Texans really sell out against the run here. But the Texans don't run. I mean, the Rams don't run. They give the play fake. And that causes pretty much the entire Texans secondary to bite down on that. You'll see Henry To'oTo'o, Lassiter, CJ Gardner Johnson. You'll have Bullock here, but specifically Jalen Petrie gets put in the bind because of that play fake. He comes down on it initially. He makes a good for shifts his eyes pretty well to get to Nacua, but Because of where Puka Nacua was positioned, he's probably if he's not the Rams' best receiver, he was on Sunday. Between him and Devontae Adams, he had 10 catches for 130 yards. This was really the capper on the day. But you don't really want Jalen Petrie in coverage on the other team's best receiver in one of those crucial moments. So he bites and he puts himself in worse position by biting down on that play action, and kind of focusing on the run. He does well to kind of recover, but just because of where Nakua is, he's able to slip him in man coverage, get outside pretty quickly, and that's an easy throw for Matthew Stafford to win the game there. Um, so that's just another example. You're going to have, even if Nakua wasn't open, it'd probably be a worse, more difficult throw. But you have this tight end over here as well that's pretty open, just because of the defenders biting down on the ball. So what we're seeing there again is more lack of eye discipline, from a lot of the Texans backfield to allow some big plays in the secondary. So those were three pretty crucial plays in the game that ended up allowing the Rams to ultimately pull out victorious. Probably three of the Rams' most crucial offensive plays for sure. So in the biggest moments, obviously, I think the Texans secondary, to reiterate, wasn't the biggest issue for for the Texans. I mean, the offensive line needed some work. They're obviously still rebuilding, and that Jake Andrews injury could be big, as well as kind of some of the other injuries that were bouncing them around. And the Texans offense just not being able to score a touchdown, and kind of those consistent penalties. That's really what the Texans need to clean up. But just because of the standard that the Texans secondary played at and hold themselves to, kind of the difference between those two, on Sunday, it was pretty surprising. I think it was surprising to the coaches as well. And I think a big issue with that is the eye discipline that the Texans kind of really didn't have, on Sunday. So uh, if the Texans really want to hold themselves to that secondary, that best secondary in the league, type standard, this is really going to be a area that they're going to need to focus on this week and going forward. If you remember last year, the Texans also had some issues, in week one with some leaky coverages and allowing some deep shots to Anthony Richardson and the Colts. So they were able to clear those up. So the Texans will have to employ some of the same strategies they did last year with cleaning up their coverage and fixing some of those issues that they had early on in the year, to start playing the way that they were kind of coming down the stretch last year, fixing some of those issues. So by far, the Texans secondary wasn't the biggest issue on Sunday, but if they're going to hold themselves to that standard of being the best in the league, they're going to have to fix those eye discipline issues. So thanks for watching. I'm going to start experimenting with this format of some film breakdowns, coming up here. So let me know if you like it, and thanks so much.